laws related to which gives the Director of the Department of Labor and Training the authority to exempt certain classes of employees from receiving overtime pay for Sunday and holiday work.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. This is the shortest piece of legislation we'll deal all year, I'm sure. And the Chairman just described it perfectly. This act repeals the general laws which give the Director of DLT the authority to exempt certain classes of employees from receiving overtime pay on Sundays and holidays, and it puts that power back into the hands of the General Assembly. The United States Supreme Court has found that placing restrictions on work performed on Sundays and holidays, ensuring a common day of rest, is a proper exercise of the state's police powers, and the Rhode Island Supreme Court has said that premium pay requirements are intended to serve both as an additional deterrent to conducting business on Sundays and holidays, and as a reward for employees who sacrifice their free time for such employment. Most workers today already have enough uncertainty in their lives without adding to their angst by allowing for the possibility that some of their protections and earning powers are eliminated. Now, the state no longer requires businesses to seek permits to operate on Sundays and holidays, but who to believe that 20 years ago you could have bought a car or a case of beer on a Sunday, hopefully not at the same time. None of this changes the fact that police powers of the state are vested in the legislature and not an administrative agency. As such, any determination of elimination of class workers from the rule that requires businesses to pay their employees at least 1.5 times their normal wage for work performed on Sundays and holidays should be enacted as part of the law and not by rule or regulation. I'll take any questions if you have.
Any questions for the sponsor of this meeting? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Elizabeth Seaver on behalf of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce. We're here in opposition to this bill today because we have some concerns. Well, we're not objecting per se to the movement from the Director of DLT to make this determination about Sunday premium pay to the General Assembly. The problem is that our General Assembly does not sit around. So if there were to be a business that were to look to relocate to Rhode Island, they would have a long period of uncertainty as to their predicted labor costs because they would have to wait for this body to convene and then hear the legislation before they can get certainty as to whether they can get an exemption for Sunday premium pay. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. I'm here strongly in support of moving the decision for overtime pay on Sundays from the DLT to the General Assembly. Where obviously the insecurity that has been addressed by the Chamber of Commerce is real, and we don't dispute that. We do believe that it is the people's decision that's left to the people's representatives to decide what business can certainly be exempted from the overtime requirement. Though the General Assembly does not meet year-round, that's true. I think most business models can plan for more than 6 months at a time. Hopefully they do. If not, so they should probably revisit the way they do business in order to do this. It's not an unusual, and I don't think it's an undue burden to ask the Assembly to do this. So I'm urging that this committee pass this bill. Thank you.
Good evening.
Welcome back.
Thank you. So I'll be very brief. I will not reiterate what Representative Amori said. I thank him for putting in this very important bill for a lot of workers. And I think we just wanted to make one more point that definitely we think this should be a legislative action rather than an administrative action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of this committee. Rick McAuliffe on behalf of the United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 328. Local 328 is the largest private sector union in the state of Rhode Island. They represent about 7,000 members. They represent all the Stop and Shop workers, Shaw's Marketplace. They represent Eastside Marketplace, the cafeteria workers at Roger Williams University. And they also represent many of the school workers in many of your districts in the state. Additionally, they represent a lot of the credit unions and so forth. This bill, I want to applaud Representative Moore for sponsoring. This bill has been put forward because we would like to see the power restored to the legislative branch rather than the administrative branch on an issue like this. Let me just talk very quickly on this bill because I think there was some misconception. Many years ago, supermarkets were not open on Sunday. And the supermarket industry went to the legislature in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and other places, and basically said, we'd like to stay open on Sundays. And there was an agreement between both sides that we'll open on Sundays, but we'll recognize that a lot of people who have Sundays off to be with their families, to go to church, to go to attend family gatherings, soccer games, and athletic events and social events, would be recognized and get time and a half on Sundays. So that legislation passed. What it did also, though, was it made sure that certain classification of employees were not included in that. So, restaurant workers are not included in that. They are exempt from time and a half. Restaurants do not have to pay time and a half on Sundays. The nursing home industry, and I know it very well, the previous speaker said that they would be affected. They will not be affected. I represent the nonprofit nursing homes for the last 17 years. They do not have to pay time and a half. Anybody in a supervisory role does not have to pay time and a half. The reason we want to bring this legislation up is that we believe that sometimes, unfortunately, in a regulatory hearing, either the classification employees aren't able to get to the hearing, or there's not the transparency that we can get here at the legislative level. Last year, you guys passed a piece of legislation which exempted workers at Twin River for doing time and a half on Sundays. We actually testified in favor of that bill, even though they weren't no longer see time and a half. Both management and the union worked together to say, look, we want to keep these jobs and we want to keep Twin River up and viable. And so they did that. But they did it the right way. They went through the legislative process. What we would like to see is that the legislature has the ability to exempt a specification of workers. Again, right now we're talking about food service workers, specifically in the grocery area. We're not talking about others. There's 8 exemptions of classes right now that want to do this. This is not a competitive disadvantage. Massachusetts has the same exact laws on the books. On the argument of you guys are only in for 6 months, and what if the governor decides to bring a company in? Most companies, about 90% of the kind of companies that I would say 100% of what the governor's trying to do, high wage, high income workers, they would be exempt from this. So General Electric that came in, these other companies that came in, they would be exempt from this. If a company was coming in with great jobs, we would be the first ones urging you guys to get back to work and pass that. But so many of the things that you guys do affect businesses, and you're only here for 6 months. So that argument really, in my opinion, doesn't hold water, because you're going to be working on stuff today that's going to have an impact on where the company's coming out. We strongly urge you to pass this legislation. That will not change any classification of employees. Nobody will be changed. What it would do, if somebody wants to come and wants the exemption of a class of employees, they would come here and they would go through the same process that you do for minimum wage, the same process you're going to be doing for family and medical. It's the process that we think should be done at the legislative level and not the administrative level. You're elected officials, that's an appointed position, and we certainly like to see more open, transparent opportunities for which us to plead our case, whether we should grant time and a half or not.
Any questions for Yes.
Just one quick question. You just made reference to the fact that you want to see more open and transparent process. Are you alleging that with the director it is not open and transparent right now?
It's a great question. I don't mean to insinuate that at all. As a matter of fact, this director is probably the best one that we've worked with. We just feel, unfortunately, that sometimes classes of employees aren't aware, they don't look at public notices in the departments and so forth. And these aren't people that I represent. These are people that may be in a classification. We had an issue with a bakery in Rhode Island, which has been around for a long time. They never paid time and a half on Sundays. They owed employees over years. They never paid it. They just settled with the State Department of Labor and Training. They owed about $800,000 because for years they never paid those employees. So they paid $800,000. And the only reason they only paid $800,000 is because it only went back 3 years. They would pay a lot more. We believe that the better opportunity to petition the government, it would be done here, not there. But this Department of Labor Training has been very good. I don't mean to insinuate other than.
The situation you're talking about, did they have a determination prior to the fine?
No, what happened was we had heard from workers that had been working there. Most of them were Spanish-speaking workers that came in. They were told that they were going to get paid straight time. They were actually getting paid less than the minimum wage. If it wasn't for organizers that the organization I represent, they would have never brought it to the Department of Labor and Training. Nobody would have known about it. And again, this legislation doesn't change anything. The exemptions of most classification employees are already there. There's 8 right now that are exempted. So since this law came in place, there's been 8 times. One of the places that happened was a couple of years ago, Senator Chafee, and I think
Governor Chafin and Governor Raimondo, there was an opportunity down in Quonset that food service workers that came from Ireland to package food for Starbucks and airlines. We thought it was a great idea. They were working and so forth, but there was an opportunity for us to have a discussion. We knew about it. We don't always know why.